Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. No, you're not looking at the Pillsbury Doughboy. It's me. It's Erin O'Connell, volunteer coordinator and animal care manager here at Environmental Learning Centers of Connecticut. And today we're going to be talking about honeybees. We have 2 honeybee hives here on Indian Rock Farm. They have only been here a little under a month, so they are still in their single supers, and we're going to talk a little bit about all of that stuff in just a second. So behind me, I have some information to show you, some props and some tools of the trade. One of those tools, or your PPE when you're dealing with honeybees, is your bee suit. If you're a first-time or a beginner beekeeper, don't be ashamed of wearing the full suit. It is something that is going to give you confidence when you're working the bees, okay? A lot of beekeepers that are experienced, they may not have the full suit, but you should always have at least a veil covering your face, because nothing is worse than getting stung on your face or in your ear or in your nose or on the back of your neck and trying to remain calm so as not to upset the bees even more. I know I can't do that, so I will have this full veil as part of my suit. And I also wear leather gloves, okay? So this is my PPE for working the bees. Now, when our bees first came, I'm going to periodically be stoking my smoker here, which may have gone out. When we first got our bees, these bees were not overwintered here in Connecticut. They did not grow up here. They actually came from Georgia. They were trucked up here. And we bought them as what's called package bees. So each package comes in a box like this. And obviously this was full of bees when we got it, okay? And if you can picture a little metal can hanging down in the middle there, which would have been the bees' food, a simple syrup solution for them to eat on their trek up. And this little box was also inside of this package of bees. And inside this little box, which would have sat right here in this little slot, this piece would have gone on top like that. In this little box, it says marked on the back. Marked means it was a marked queen. The queen bee came in separate, or is kept separate initially, in a set of package bees, because this queen bee was not mom of all the workers in that package. So 3 pounds of bees, about 10,000 workers, 1 queen. And the queen will come with a couple of worker bees in there to kind of feed her, keep her company, and while she's getting acclimated to her new family. So when we introduce our package bees, we have to do it a little bit slowly, because there is a possibility that that new queen would be rejected by those workers that she was placed with. So in another video, which we'll show you, is the whole the package install process. But essentially we put all those bees into that hive and we let them get acclimated to the queen for another 3 days or so. She's going to sit inside the hive, and then after that time period we actually will open up, because you can see here there's a little plug on this side, a little cork, and on this side there's a little piece of sugar, and there was a little metal cap. That little metal cap we remove after those 3 days of her being in the hive with the new workers, and she will, and the workers will eventually eat through that little sugar plug, and she'll be introduced into the new hive, and hopefully everyone is happy. Big happy family. So, a little bit about the hive. When we first put them in, we do have to feed them, because when they come in early April, there's maybe not a lot of flowers out and not a lot of forage for them. Right now, if we look at the field, there's some dandelions, there's some violets, there are some other spring flowers for them to forage on, but we do have to help them out a little bit. And we do that by feeding them a simple syrup sugar solution. But last year, I had one hive that did not make it, but they did have honey stores. So I actually kept that honey store and used it to feed them instead of doing a sugar solution. If we were doing a sugar solution though, we have these little inserts that we can put down into the hive body, okay, those little ridges that this would sit on, just like a frame, and we could fill that with sugar water. And there's these little ladders in there. They can climb down into there to drink that simple syrup solution, just sugar and water. That's one way of doing it. Or you can use what's called a little Boardman feeder, which is just a mason jar. We fill that up with our syrup solution. And you can put that down at the base of the hive, near the hive entrance, like this. And the bees will come out and they'll feed from the little holes in that lid jar. But I'm not doing any of that this year. It's a lot less work for me. I put in some of the honey frames from the winter time. This is what a clean frame, a fresh frame looks like. Okay, this is what is going to be the structure that the bees will build out their comb. This is a plastic frame. There are wooden frames. People have their own preferences with beekeeping. I prefer to use plastic frames. Helps a little bit with a pest species, the wax moths. They can't do what they like to do on the plastic, so it helps with that. But this has got a nice thin layer of wax starter for the bees to build out their comb. Okay. As I'm going in and periodically checking the hives once a week, this is a little bit of what the comb would look like that's being built up and off of that frame. It's hexagonal shape, those little cells. And those cells serve a couple of different purposes. It's going to be where baby bees grow. So an egg will be laid, one egg in each one of those cells, and grow the baby bees from larva to pupa to adult. It's going to be a storage place for all of the pollen that they collect from visiting flowers and the nectar. And it's also where they're going to store their food, build up their honey stores throughout the summer and the fall so they can survive throughout the winter. And that's what they would eat throughout the winter. And I think the smoker went out, so we're just going to put it down here. So if we're looking at our bees, give you an idea. Here's just a little plate of the transformation. The eggs are tiny, tiny, but when they hatch into a larvae that it grows. There are worker bees or nurse bees that will feed the larvae that are inside those cells. They'll visit those cells 1,000 times a day, maybe more, doing daily checkups multiple times a day and feeding them maybe 100 to 200 times a day. And as they grow pretty quickly. They grow into a pupa, and from that pupa, they will be an adult bee. Now there are 3 castes of bees: worker, queen, and drone. Here we have the drone, who looks pretty big. You might have thought that was the queen, but in fact it's not. Drones are male bees. The one in the middle, that is the queen bee. She's actually a little small looking. She usually has a longer abdomen. And then you have your worker bee. Drones will not live very long. Drones are actually, the only purpose for the drones, they don't go out and they don't collect nectar. They don't collect pollen. They don't do anything in the hive except eat and hang out. Their only purpose is to find a mate. So they might leave the hive at a certain point in time in the year and search for a mate. If they don't find a mate, they come back and they just hang out and eat. So they really don't do anything productive in the hive. So at the end of the season, when resources are getting a little thin and we need to start thinking about honey stores and surviving the winter, the worker bees kick out any drones. Drones, the egg is laid by the queen, and it is an infertile egg. That is what creates a drone. The worker bees, when that egg is laid, it's a fertilized egg. All worker bees are female. Okay? The females are worker bees. They don't live very long either, but they live a little bit longer than the drones, okay? In the height of summer, when they are working really, really hard, trying to collect a lot of their food, a lot of honey stores and things like, a lot of pollen, a lot of food, they can live 4 to 6 weeks, maybe 6 weeks maximum. In the wintertime, their life expectancy is going to go up. The ones that are born and raised in the fall, they're going to live 5 to 6 months because they're not doing as much activity. They're just hanging out in the hive during the wintertime, and they are going to be feeding on their honey stores. Okay? So I did manage before we started to get a couple of frames out of one of our hives here. And I check these hives once a week or so to make sure everything's doing okay. The last time I was in this hive, I was just making sure the queen made it out of her queen case. So this week I'm checking for, 1, is the queen alive? Is she there? 2, is she doing her job? Are there eggs? Are there larvae? Are the workers doing what they're supposed to be doing? Do we see workers going in and out of the hives carrying pollen on their legs? So if we want to take a look, we can see what the inside of the hive might look like. This is just an observation hive. So I'm going to put these 2 frames, as soon as we're done, they're going to go back into their hive home. And it might be a little difficult for you guys to see with the glass reflection, but we have all stages going on here. Down here in the way bottom, we have eggs. 1 egg in each of those cells. Ooh, here's the queen. Look how much bigger she looks when she's alive. Very long. She's got that blue dot on her. Makes it easier for us beekeepers to find the queen if she's got a mark on her like that. So we have queen bee walking around. She's going to stick her head in those cells. If she finds an empty cell, she's going to turn around and stick her bottom inside the cell and lay an egg. She can lay 2,000 eggs a day. Her only job is to continue this hive on. Lay eggs, create more bees, okay? She will live, if I didn't say this already, she can live anywhere from 4 to 6 maximum. I think the oldest bee on record, queen bee, was 7 years of age. A lot of beekeepers, if they have a lot of hives, if they're looking for productive hives because they are making honey to sell, bee products, things like that, they might replace their queen once or twice a year. But they can live, on average, 5 years or so and still be pretty productive. If you look over here, you can see there are capped cells. Those cells have baby bees growing in there. So I have a picture for you because it's kind of hard to see there. But here in this picture, there are the different stages of bee development. The one on the top here. So this is just a cross section of a beehive, of a frame. There's the egg there. Tiny, tiny little egg. Then you have your new fresh hatched larva. A larva that has grown a bit more. It's been fed. You can see in the bottoms of these cells here, where the larva has been removed, probably just for this picture, but that is actually bee bread. That is what the worker or the nurse bees are feeding these larvae. Then you have a more advanced stage of a larva. Going into a pupa stage, looks a bit more like a bee now, doesn't it? You can see the eyes, the antenna, the legs, head, thorax, and abdomen. And as we keep going, we get eventually closer to what looks like an adult bee, and it'll hatch out of that cell. If you happen to see some comb that looks a little bit different, those little cells are fairly flattened. I know those are worker bees in those cells. If the cells were a bit bigger, a bit more rounded at the top, that would mean that was a drone inside that cell. If you start to get a cell that looks more like a peanut, what do you think might be growing in there? That is a queen cell. Another reason why we have to be pretty vigilant and pay attention to what's going on in our hive as beekeepers, we want to make sure that we keep our hive happy and healthy, give them enough room to thrive, but we don't want them to swarm. Swarming is a normal process for a beehive. That is the normal process because the whole point of these guys is to keep growing and keep the species going, right? So in order to keep a single hive going, it's going to get big, it's going to outgrow its space. The worker bees will choose a fertilized egg, feed it a special substance called royal jelly, and grow a new queen. That new queen will not get along with the old queen. There can only be one queen in this hive. So the old queen, the more experienced queen, there may be a fight to see who's going to stay and who's going to go, but one of those queens will end up leaving to go find a new place to live, better resources, more food, and can grow and start a brand new hive of honeybees. You can see a little bit over here, a little bit of shine inside those cells. There's nectar in there, and the ones sometimes next to it, right next to it, they're packed with a little bit of pollen as well. So while you guys are looking at that, I'm going to see if I can get my smoker started again. And if so, we can take a peek inside the other hive. In the time that we have. Alright, so the smoker is starting to go. Smoker is another tool that beekeepers need to use in order to stay safe and have the bees be a little bit more workable. There's lots of different fuel that you can use. Everybody's got their own little formula of stuff that they stick in there. Burlap works really well. Pine needles, dried leaves, untreated cardboard, untreated burlap is really good as well. I'm going to see if I can get a nice smoke going. And then I'm going to stick some fresh grass on top just to cool down the smoke a little bit before I put it on the bees. Does anybody know why we use a smoker? The smoke, bees don't like smoke, just don't like we don't like smoke in our eyes. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and put my lovely hood on. So the bees don't like smoke, just like we don't like smoke. And they're going to move out of the way when we get that smoke going. It's also going to cause them to go to their honey stores and their nectar stores and fill up their bellies with that resource, and they're going to be a little bit too heavy to fly. Not too heavy. They're going to be a little bit reluctant to fly with a full belly. So they're going to stay, hopefully, more on their frames. What's going on here? If they start to get really agitated, they're going to release a pheromone that's going to tell the other bees, we're in danger, be on alert, and we must defend the hive. The smoke will actually help dissipate that pheromone, so they'll be less likely to be able to tell one bee to the other to attack. I'm putting on my glove the wrong way. So gloves, these are leather gloves. They can still sting through this leather glove. Again, not all beekeepers will wear these gloves. I'm kind of a baby. I really don't like getting stung. But they can be a little cumbersome when you're trying to work the hive. We have our hive tool, which is a must to get into the hive. Break up propolis. Our bee brush to brush bees out of the way very gently. It's very soft bristles. Okay, so why don't we come over here, we'll take a look. This hive. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to give a few puffs of smoke right down into the hive entrance. Give them about 30 seconds or so. Open up this hive. We keep this little piece, this little strap on the top, just to make sure that doesn't blow off. Some people put rocks on top. I'm gonna open up, this is called the outer cover. You can see there's some bees on there. I'm gonna lean that up against the fence. And I'm going to give a few more puffs of smoke right into that opening. Remember, I did put some grass, wet grass on top of the burning part so that smoke is cooler as to not burn the bees. Give them a little time. And then I'm going to use my hive tool to pry open this inner cover. And we've got lots of bee activity. Part of my job, in addition to checking the health of the hive, I'm going to be removing all of these little pieces of burr comb. They're trying to fill all the spaces in here. This is just going to cause me more problems later on, so when we're done, I'm going to smoke these bees off, and I'm going to remove all of that comb that they've started there. Before you place anything on the ground, you want to make sure that you don't have the queen on any of your materials. So I'm going to give a few puffs of smoke. The wind's going to blow it a little bit. But you can see in this hive, I do have one wood frame in here. Most of them are plastic, but even the ones in the middle here have fresh comb being drawn from that plastic frame. Okay. And if you want to back up a little bit, Lauren, so I'm going to see if I can bring these guys out. I'm just going to bring one frame out for you guys, because this will take me a little bit of time. But basically what I'm doing is I'm sticking my hive tool in to make it a little bit easier for me to release it, because they've got all sorts of comb and propolis built up here. And I'm going to gently lift that, grab the edges, and pull it up, and take a look. I've not been in this hive for a week, but this was blank, completely blank comb when I first put it in, so they're starting to draw out comb. You can see that. I don't see any eggs in here yet, but that's okay because this is really fresh. But there is nectar in that freshly drawn comb. Maybe I can pull one out that looks a little better. I did not see the queen on there. Move your bee butt. We've got more bees. This is a little heavier. We probably got some honey or something on this one from last year, maybe. So alright, so I see a lot of eggs on here. Since it's a black frame, do you see those little tiny dots in the center of those cells? That is the egg. Tiny. Now if you look a little bit down further, you can see some capped comb. That is not baby bee comb. That is capped nectar. They're making honey. They're storing honey in those down there. The ones with baby bees are going to be a little bit more opaque. Here they have packed pollen into some of those cells. And I actually see some larvae in the one over by my left hand. Can you see them? Oh yeah. You can see the larvae starting to grow. So I haven't seen the queen yet, but I know she's here. Those are fresh eggs in that other frame. There's larvae that are a couple of days old, maybe a day old. So far I am pretty happy with the way that this hive is progressing. Doesn't look like much action yet, but remember, there were only 10,000 bees when they first came under a month ago. So they are doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. Queen is laying eggs, creating more bees. The hive will just continue to grow. And then I'll add another frame. I'll add probably another deep super, big frame like a big box like this with another 10 frames on top, and give them a little bit more room to grow. If you guys have any questions about anything, feel free to leave them in the comments below. We'll answer them for you. Hope you enjoyed this little lesson about the bees. I'm gonna get back in this hive and see if I can find the queen.